All right, let's talk Florida State Seminoles football. Of course, we're looking towards 2025 after the debacle that was 2024. Florida State and head coach Mike Norvell has done a lot of really good things to correct the very serious flaws, the egregious flaws that occurred last season. But some recent comments from Norvell indicates Florida State is leaning towards a massive move at the most important position on the field, the quarterback position. We'll get to that in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick. That is Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the Florida State Seminoles, they were really good at quarterback with Jordan Travis for 2023. They were really bad at quarterback regardless of who was behind center in 2024. And that obviously is going to need to be a big change as we get closer to 2025. And to that end, of course, everyone's familiar with it at this point. Months ago, the Florida State Seminoles secured a big-time transfer. And now, if you listen to the coaching staff, it's clear they believe this is a special kid as he's become ingrained in the FSU program. Let's get into the report, and then we'll get into more details on the other side. This is courtesy of On3 Sports. Thomas Castellanos was one of the most coveted quarterbacks to enter the NCAA transfer portal during the winter window, ultimately flipping his commitment from Auburn to Florida State in mid-December. And based on recent comments from Seminoles head coach Mike Norvell, it's shaping out to be a wise decision from Castellanos. He is competing with sophomore quarterback Brock Glenn, and I'm not too high on Brock Glenn, and freshman Trevor Jackson to be FSU's starting quarterback in 2025. Tommy's doing a great job. He's really come in. He's so very talented, got great skill with his arm and his legs. But the thing I've been so impressed with is just his leadership and the investment he's making into his teammates, Norvell added. He really just provides a spark. From the minute he steps on the field, guys offensively and defensively are just drawn to him. And he's been great for our quarterback room. I think that's a really special room when it comes to the talent and ability those guys have. But Tommy's just got one of those personalities that really draw people to him, and he puts a lot of time in the building in those relationships. So really pleased with what we've seen so far. Look, I think the talent when it comes to Castellanos or really anybody is important. But look, we saw Florida State. They had a physically talented quarterback last year. It didn't really work out too well for them. I like the leadership aspect, obviously being a team leader, getting everyone involved, the point guard of the offense, elevating the game, having your productivity elevate everyone else's is critical at the quarterback position. And based on Norvell's comments here, I think it's pretty clear that Castellanos is the heavy favorite to be the starter based on the leadership aspect and, of course, paired with his physical talent. Now, Miles, I know you got some interesting sort of data and analysis to pair with this, but first, FSU fans, in the comment section below, as we are getting closer to the regular season, I know it's May, but it's starting to feel like college football could be, right around the corner. What's one matchup for Florida State during the 2025 season that you're more excited for than any other one, right? Is it rivalry game? Maybe it's, kickoff, whatever it may be. Give us the one matchup you're looking forward to more than any other. Put it in the comment section below. But Miles, over to you now. What are your thoughts on this latest report out of Tallahassee?
Yeah, Nate, I think the key here, and like you said, Brock Glenn, I don't think he's going to be the future of the quarterback position for this team, especially from what he did last year, because he had a lot of playing time last year. I think this is a quarterback room that this is coach speak, Norvell trying to keep his backup quarterbacks on the roster, because Castellanos, when you look at what he brings to this team versus a guy in Brock Glenn who's on the team last year and, a young freshman quarterback, it's inconceivable how much better he could make this FSU team. He was so much better than the whole FSU team as a whole last year in his last full season, 2023. Had some injuries in and out in that 2024 season. Wasn't really a complete season for him. But if we look at 2023 for Castellanos and we look at 2024 for the entire FSU offense, the whole team combined, it'll kind of create a really interesting picture for you here. So I'll pull this up now. We look first at rushing. What was this team able to do in the rushing department? The entire FSU team, every single player who touched the ball, combined for 1,079 rushing yards. When you look at what Castellanos did that season, this is a guy who ran for over 1,200 yards himself alone that season. So I think, again, really adding a lot of, talent there in the running game. We're just talking about the running game. When we look at what they do in the passing attack, Castellanos did a lot of great stuff there as well. He threw for over 2,000 yards, and all three FSU quarterbacks who took snaps, which Luke Krummenhoek took 84, attempts at throwing a pass. Glenn had 114 attempts, and DJ Uagile had 156 attempts. Those three guys combined for 2,100 yards there. So Castellanos threw more passing yards than all three of those quarterbacks who took snaps for FSU last season together. Not that surprising, but still, just to go to show he adds a lot to that room. Then finally, touchdowns. This is the one that's interesting. This is how this guy is special. And I scaled them up to wouldn't look so weird on the graph. They're scaled by 1,000. But you look at the team touchdowns, total touchdowns by this FSU team, what they were able to do. 19 touchdowns for FSU here compared to 28 by Castellanos in his own right by himself. This guy almost doubled the amount of touchdowns that FSU brought to the table last season by himself. Talking about the entire team, all the running backs, receivers. If you want to throw in defensive touchdowns there, quarterbacks, everybody compared to Castellanos. This guy almost doubled the production of this FSU team. I think this is going to be incredibly productive. I think Castellanos brings a lot to the table here. And I think when you hear Mike Norvell's comments where he says, this is a guy that brings that spark to us. Obviously, when you have a guy like this on the field versus what you had last season, it is a spark. It's actually like a roaring California wildfire in the difference between what they had on offense last year to what Castellanos could bring to this team this year. So I think a great addition here. I think we're already starting to see this guy has worked himself into being the starting quarterback for the Seminoles. And I think this is going to be something big going down the stretch. I think we're going to see a much improved team. It's going to be a work, as someone says, overnight success. This team went from being probably should have been a national championship contender in 2023, 2024. They weren't even in contention for anything. Nobody really took them seriously whatsoever. Now 2025, I think Castellanos is the guy that can get them back in the picture, fighting for the ACC title, fighting for national championship contention once again.
Yeah, and obviously Florida State was bad in a lot of areas last year. It was just a total, just shocking, just dip in performance compared to where they were. But let's not forget the importance of the quarterback position, right? Good quarterback play just supplements everything else. If you got a great passer, right, teams can't stack the box, so suddenly your offensive line is greater at run blocking. If you've got a mobile quarterback who's smart and accurate, teams can't be as aggressive with blitzes and unique stunts and things like that. So your offensive line is better at pass blocking, right? If you got a quarterback that doesn't go off the field on third down or turn the ball over all the time, then your defense doesn't have its back against the ball. So its grades and performance overall improve. So if you look at really the most important grade and performing aspect of any team, it's the passing grade at the quarterback position. If you're good there, it doesn't mean you'll be great, but it can cure a lot of woes. If you're a bad passing team, it's going to be really hard to even be average in every level of football, big time, high school, college, professional. It's a truism. It's why the quarterback position is so critical. And the Florida State Seminoles, their passing grade last year, 2024, was an absolute disaster, 61.7. You compare that to 2023, and these 2023 numbers, that includes the end of the season in the bowl game where they were on their fourth string guy. They were, it wasn't Jordan Travis at the end of the run. So this is basically sort of 80% Jordan Travis and the debacle at the end of the season. They graded out with an 80.5. So that delta between where they were in 2023 versus where they were in 2024. And again, that 2023 number is actually a little deflated because that includes the numbers after Travis got hurt. That's the same difference between what Cam Ward brought to the Miami Hurricanes and what the starting quarterback at Wake Forest brought to the Demon Deacons, right? That's a big delta between Cam Ward, Miami, and Wake Forest last year. That's the same delta that Florida State went through from 2023 to 2024. There is no world, even if you got every other position absolutely perfect and had no injury concerns, there's no world you're going to be a good team if that happens, right? And that's why Florida State, look, again, there were other problems, but there's a reason they only scored 180 points last year. Their offense, led at the quarterback position, was so freaking terrible. It was a total disaster. Tommy Castellanos comes in, and I think it's sort of disaster solved. I think those numbers really jump off the page there. I love his running element. He's a productive passer, but the touchdowns element to me is really what matters. This game is about getting the football in the red zone. It's a cliche, right? Every Saturday night we see Herb Street talk about it like, oh, you got to score in the red zone. But it is so true, right? The difference between converting a goal to go situation into a touchdown, or converting those big 4th and 4s when you're right around 40, 45, that kind of area where you don't know if you should punt or go for it. That's the difference between winning and losing. And I think Castellanos, his improvement, both as a runner and as a passer, compared to what Florida State had last year, will be a massive difference, right? People don't understand. You don't go from being the best team in college football. I think we all saw Florida State as the best team overall. If you look at the entire roster, the best team in college football until Travis's injury in 2023, to one of the worst without having, you don't lose that talent. You don't go from great talent to no talent overnight. But there are critical points of failure in any football team, any major football team, and quarterback is certainly one of them. Last year, it was such a disaster that it made so many other position groups look worse. And by the end of the season, I think it was clear the entire roster and the entire coaching staff was just so worn down by just the travesty at the QB that it basically deflated everybody. I think Castellanos brings that spark. I love that quote. I'm glad you highlighted it from Norvell. He's obviously a leader guy. He's a smart guy. He can be the reset this program needs to get things back on track. I think if you listen to the comments here, Norvell is clearly going to make him the starter. That's my opinion. Nothing against Jackson. I really hope it's not Brock Glenn. Nothing against Glenn either. I hope he goes on and do amazing things as an athlete and whatever he does. But I think it's very clear that Castellanos is exactly what Florida State needs, and I think Mike Norvell and the Florida State coaching staff believes that too.